Hi, everyone. Today we're excited to walk you through a presentation, Walking Red Flag. So just in case you're wondering, the red flag is not Switzerland's, where I'm coming from, but rather we'll be talking about China and its hacking contest ecosystem. But first, a little bit about us. You know Dakota is a strategic advisory consultant at SentinelOne, whereas I'm a cyber defense researcher at the Center for Security Studies at ETH Zurich and former threat analyst with the Italian government. So our presentation today will be divided in two parts. First, I will outline the evolution and the main components of China's hacking contest ecosystem, looking at policy efforts, growth factors, focus areas. And then Dakota will go into the specifics of three contests and their connection to government security agencies. And these are the Information Security Ironman Triathlon, CTF4, and the Zhujian Cup. Now, between 2015 and 2021, China has taken several efforts to improve its talent identification and development pipeline, including through hacking contests. And chief among this policy has been the 2018 notice on regulating the promotion of cybersecurity competitions. Now, this had several provisions. For example, participants, must apply through the Ministry of Public Security, which is China's law enforcement agency, to go abroad and compete. It bans the use of high-value prizes to attract participants. And then it requires vulnerabilities from competitions to be submitted to relevant departments, namely government security agencies. And this notice had two main effects. First, Chinese participants were effectively banned from participating in exploit contests abroad, where participants had to disclose 0 days in real time, such as Pwn2Own in Vancouver, Canada. And also it prevented 0 days from leaving the country. As a result, government agencies could have access to them. And for example, here we have a screenshot from the article Same But Different by Winona Benson, where we have two high-level executives from the company iSoon. You might remember this company, this company's internal files were leaked early this year, revealing its involvement in cyber espionage operations. And here, these two executives discuss the possibility of getting access to 0 days that were disclosed during the Tianfu Cup, China's domestic exploit competition. And they discuss also the fact that the MPS has access to them and then likely distributes them to regional bureaus. So these provisions have been significant, obviously, and widely discussed. However, there is one provision more towards the end of the document that has been less in the spotlight. And this is basically the notice encouraging and supporting public good-oriented cybersecurity competitions, likely referring to Capture the Flag or CTF contests. So given this, what we can call a political demand signal for CTFs, the Cary and I decided to dive deeper into this ecosystem. So we have collected data and analyzed about 544 competition rounds since 2014, about which 129 were unique competitions, and 54 were unique and recurring competitions. And while many are organized, like in other parts of the world, by private companies and universities, some were also organized by government agencies, including the MPS, but also the Ministry of Security, China's Civilian Intelligence Agency, and the People's Liberation Army. But I don't want to spoil too much. Dakota will talk about that soon. So with the 54 data collected on the unique and recurrent events, we compiled an online database, which will be available soon, promise. And it's an interactive database where you can actually click on each contest to get access to more accurate information. For example, the years this has been active, the average total number of participants, the competition hosts, as well as some links to the write-ups of the contest. And the primary data sources have been mainly a China-based CTF company, then a blog run by CTF participant in China, and then the CTF Time online database. Now, as we were going through the data, we realized that the distribution of contests has been quite uneven over time. You can see between 2004 and 2014, there were about 1 to 3 contests each year, more or less. And this really spiked around 2017, 2018, when the 2018 notice that we discussed earlier basically was issued. But it's important here to mention that this growth, the prominence of the hacking contest ecosystem really goes beyond state-led efforts and includes a big role played by China's hacking community. And in particular, around 2013, 2014, you can see when the competition started picking up a little bit. And this is the time when Chinese hacking teams start achieving remarkable results at international prestigious competitions such as DEF CON CTF and Pwn2Own. And this matters because before then, like in other parts of the world, Chinese hackers were not seen in a positive light. There were a lot of taboos about hacking in general. But this very much changed after their successes abroad. So for example, here you have a picture from Tsinghua University's Blue Lotus team, the first Chinese team to ever reach the DEF CON CTF finals in 2013. And you can see on the graph on the right side where the blue dots are the Chinese teams and the red are the American, US teams. I know I might have mixed up the colors here, but get the point. And then you can see how year by year, not only the number of Chinese teams reaching the finals increased, but also reach higher and higher rankings. And this had very much of a spillover effect into China's domestic ecosystem. So the teams that were successful at DEF CON founded their own contests, and not just any contest, some of the most prestigious globally, such as CTF or Tencent CTF. And they did this either through companies that they themselves have founded, for example, Sunny Network Security or Chitin Tech, or in cooperation with tech giants, such as Baidu and Tencent. And yes, there's also one in cooperation with iSoon. But here I want to focus for 1 second on Sunny Network Security. So this company is particularly important because it's one of the 2 companies that produces the cyber ranges on which almost the totality of CTF contests in China use. The other company being Integrity Technology Group. These are both known vulnerability suppliers to the vulnerability database run by the MSS, China's civilian intelligence agencies, called the CNMBD. But the Integrity Technology Group in particular goes 1 step further. You might remember from yesterday. So this company popped up in a cybersecurity advisory from the NSA, Cyber Command, and the FBI in cooperation with the Five Eyes countries, condemning China-linked hackers for compromising routers and IoT devices for botnet operations. Integrity Technology Group was the entity controlling and managing this botnet. This is significant not only because we have such an explicit condemnation of a private company of this magnitude, which is publicly listed, but also given the important role that this company plays with regard to the talent identification and development ecosystem in China. So Chinese team success story at DEF CON CTF can also be told for China regarding China's participation at Pwn to Own. As you can see here in the pie charts, between 2014 and 2017, the share of the prize money awarded to Chinese team increased from 13% in 2014 to nearly 80% in 2017. Also, the number of teams increased. You have 1 team in 2014 and about at least 7 in 2017, largely by Tencent. And here, this is, again, also important because like for DEF CON, it had a very big impact on the domestic ecosystem in China because this is the time where the biggest and most important Chinese vulnerability research labs were founded, starting with Chuho and Tencent, but this then proliferated to other companies as well, hosting some of the best vulnerability researchers globally. These are the people, relatively few people, who submit an incredible amount of vulnerabilities to the bug bounty programs of Apple, Microsoft, and Google, for example. So long story short, the government has played an important role in encouraging and supporting the growth of this ecosystem, but it was also very much organically grown in a sense. And the role of big tech played an important role in dismantling the taboos that we discussed earlier. Then, last but not least, for my part of the presentation, something that we thought really sets China apart is also the reach and amount of sector-specific CTF contests in areas such as, for example, healthcare, smart cities, law enforcement, and industrial control systems, among others. We'll just look at a couple examples here. So, for example, the National Health Industry CyberSecurity Skills Competition, where participants have to compete on simulated hospital networks. And these are particularly targeted at practitioners. So we're talking about professionals. It explicitly excludes college students, universities. And what's interesting is that, for example, by looking at this screenshot about the winning teams, we can see how this effectively created a competitive ecosystem among CTF teams across hospitals. And then finally, the Blue Cap Cup. This is focused on law enforcement. Like most other CTFs, it is divided in a qualification and a final round. In the qualification round, participants had to compete on electronic evidence collection and case investigation challenges. Whereas in the final round, they have to it takes more of an attack defense formats, and contestants have, for example, to breach the network of cyber criminals, and maybe to seize back maybe some assets that were stolen. So basically, it is a realistic cybercrime scenario in which they have to compete. And some of the statements from the winning team, for example, show us who the participants are, and this includes public universities, as well as police academies and colleges. So I think this is very interesting, for example, the combination of these two when it comes, for example, to bolstering defenses against threat against critical infrastructure like hospital from ransomware attacks, for example, like we saw this morning with Max's presentation. I will now turn over to Dakota with some very interesting findings.
Thank you. So part of the data that you'll see on the website that'll go up in the next week or two through Atlantic Council and the follow-on report is going to cover just how many government ministries have their own marquee collegiate level national CTF competitions. There's like multiple NCAAs for hacking in China, all affiliated with different ministries. One of those ministries is the Ministry of State Security. So the Information Security Ironman Triathlon is co-sponsored by the Ministry of State Security, the Ministry of Education, as well as world-class cybersecurity schools, which is a formal government designation from China. It was originally designed to improve coordination of academic curricula between the universities and industry, what industry hoped to see. And so they did this by creating a team structure where students would participate with one professor and one randomly assigned volunteer from industry. So these people are from cybersecurity companies, et cetera. And those teams would go on to compete. And this competition occurs across China, which I'll show in a second. But the 2023 closing conference, as it was, that happens in Beijing, includes the MSS 13th Bureau Director on stage giving a talk about how important this round of competitions is across China. You can see here how China's broken down into basically rounds for qualification. There are semifinals and then finals affiliated with this competition. As a triathlon, it obviously has three legs. One is for personal computing devices, so this is typical things that consumers interact with. The second is a corporate enterprise network simulation, so deploying defensive software, large-scale pen testing, et cetera. And then the third is for incident response and management, which we all know is important in today's economy. This part is really interesting, though, because the competition states that, and this is from the MSS 13th Bureau website affiliated with this competition, that semifinalists and finalists are entered into this national cybersecurity talent database. If this database was meant to facilitate hiring by the private sector, we would expect it to be publicly accessible, perhaps tout the success of placing students into industry, et cetera. But the database is none of those things. In fact, we only found 2 or 3 mentions of this database online. The other one was from CTF War. CTF War is another competition affiliated with the Ministry of State Security. This one co-hosted by the MSS's own National Cyberspace Security Talent Cultivation Base. So this is a literal facility, but also an organization that is constructed by the MSS 13th Bureau in Beijing and Beijing Huagong University. CTF War, though, is not just a competition that occurs across China. It also has semifinals and finals. It has multiple regions. I think there's 6 divisions within China. And we also think it also contributes to talent spotting for the Ministry of State Security. So if you are able to log into the website, you would be able to see this format, which would include your name, where you go to school, any vulnerability reports that you've previously filed, write-ups from past competitions, things you're participating in, or practice that you're taking part in on the CTF War platform. So you can see the divisions in which you can practice, and then there are different difficulties associated with those. And you can imagine if you are a government agency responsible for hiring and recruiting talent, that participants in this system or users of this website and training platform would be really useful for targeting outreach into hiring people. Students, again, have access to kind of a persistent Jeopardy-style competition where vulnerabilities are patched back into products. You can log on and try and test your skills on those products. But CTF War is abnormal for one other reason. there were no competition write-ups. We were able to find write-ups for almost all of the competitions in our data set. You'll be able to see that on the website when it's online. There was only one other competition that did not have any write-ups, and that was the Zhujian Cup. We think that the Zhujian Cup actually targeted an actual unwilling, unconsenting collection target. We think this for a number of reasons that we'll get into. It includes 200 students from a variety of different universities. It was hosted by Northwestern Polytechnical University, so hold that in mind. We'll get to the institution in a second. It was held on New Year's Eve weekend. It's a great time to hit Western targets when everyone's on vacation or they're inebriated or both. Neither of the co-hosts for this competition are cyber range providers. You'd need one if you're hosting a CTF. And they have one hell of an NDA, which we'll get into. But I want to draw your attention to this massive sculpture on the Northwestern Polytechnical University campus. It is a person who has just forged a sword, handing it over to somebody else for inspection use. And that is the ethos of this institution. They have multiple government labs that are focused on weapons development for the People's Liberation Army. They are the development center for China's hypersonic weapons systems. And they are also the alleged victim of NSA hacking, according to Chinese state media. But the competition also has a weird ask. They want a political background check to participate in this competition. They ask you about your recent political and ideological work, if you've received awards or demerits recently, if there are any significant problems for your immediate family members. So these are political issues. And then the same question for yourself and your main social relationships. Now, in the West, we think of background checks as this thing that governments do to look for moral defects. In China, they typically check for political issues because their main focus is the concern of the political security of the Chinese Communist Party. This aligns well with what we see in Article 43 of China's state secrets law. So the first requirement of Article 43 is that they have good political caliber and moral conduct, which is exactly what you would learn if you filled out that background check. But the Zhujian Cup also came with one heck of an NDA. We have translated, or rather paid a professional translation firm to translate it, which we selectively have on this slide here. I want to note different parts of this which state that you will be assisting in deleting and removing the acquired data. Where the acquired data comes from, unclear. You're also deleting and removing backdoors uploaded to the target system, and you will not retain any of this data. If you divulge this information publicly, that is not allowed. You are expected to rectify this. If there are leakages of data, you are supposed to facilitate the investigation by local public security authorities. And then finally, in Clause 9, just something that I can't imagine is possible in a traditional CTF, if you cause loss or harm to the organizer and the country, you as an individual bear legal responsibility. Now, it feels like we might be out on a limb, but there is a history of these types of events kind of taking place. We know from Intrusion Truth that APT40 used hacking events on a Hainan University campus to attract students for recruits or source vulnerabilities for operations. The Financial Times went on to report that some of those students were actually hired unbeknownst to them, into an operation where they were translating stolen technical documents from intelligence targets in the West into Mandarin. And the students were unaware that they were working for an intelligence agency or an intelligence cutout. Second to that, we have the report from Threat Connect, the Anthem hack, where there's infrastructure overlap between a competition at Southeast University and the hack of Anthem Insurance. And the timeline of the competition aligns with a failed hack or failed hacking attempt into a defense industrial-based company in the United States. So the only clause not met from the evidence that we've collected on Article 43 of the State Secrets Law is undergoing secrecy education and training. It's the only clause that we don't have. And what we also don't have is a victim. No body, no crime. We did do an alternative competing hypothesis comparison on this, where we ask questions like, would they be using realistic cyber range? Why not just say that? Seems like something you would want to advertise. Why the NDA? Why the background check? And then are they doing crowd testing against a consenting organization? These things happen, things like hack the Pentagon, et cetera, but there's language for that. In the third box on the right there, you can see Jiangsu, which is the word for crowd testing, security, and testing. There's no other hypothesis that we were able to come up with that best explains what happens at the Zhujian Cup. And so we invite all of you to help us identify a victim. Thank you.